Hello and welcome to another lockdown episode of Sheffield Hopcast. Another guest that's joining us as well. I'm James. Let's go around and meet our team. Adam is here. He's had a few technical difficulties, but you are now with us.
I'm here. Hopefully, I don't sound like Barry White like a few weeks ago.
No, you did just before we started recording, but I think we've just about cracked it. So, what's your lockdown beer this week?
Well, we've been very kindly sent some beers from Utopian Brewing, which are a lager brewery from Devon. So they've sent us a couple of their core range, and this is the unfiltered version of their British lager. So I'm very looking forward to tasting it.
Sounds good. An unfiltered lager. I like the sound of that. Yeah. Good
British,
stuff.
all British hops and all British ingredients. So, yeah.
Thank you very much to Utopian for sending us those. Let's swiftly segue into Laura and her latest brewery clothing outfit.
Yes. Well, I did get a delivery from Fierce this week, bought a box of beers and this sweatshirt, which I'm very much enjoying. Nice and cozy on a cloudy day. But I thought, seeing as I've also gone for one of the Utopians to drink this week, so I thought in lieu of drinking one of my new Fierce beers, I would wear the sweatshirt on this occasion. So that's where that's come from. But yeah, I've got the dark lager from Utopian. I love a Dunkel, and you don't really see that many around, really. So I'm really excited to try it. I've not had anything from Utopian before. I'm going to be completely honest and say I hadn't heard of them before, but I enjoyed discovering a new brewery. So really looking forward to giving this one a go.
Good stuff. Sounds very intriguing. Looking forward to your review of that one. Now, Sean, hey up.
Hey up. Hello there from the Rotherham Barnsley border this afternoon. I was just discussing with James just before we started that this is the first time I've not had the sun in my eyes since we started doing these lockdown series. It's a grey, dirty day, 14 miles away from most of you lot. But I've got a beer to brighten up my early evening. So I've gone for a Colonel, very distinctive bottle. It's a beer that I had about a week ago. One of their latest beer, the Saison series, mixed fermentation Saison, and it's their Damson. It's a beautiful colour. And it's absolutely gloriously delicious. I'm going to really enjoy the next 40 minutes drinking that.
Very nice. I should say, by the way, I had the great honour this week of, from a safe distance, but actually seeing Sean not over Zoom, only for a few seconds. But we did actually see each other in actual real life, didn't we? As opposed to over an internet connection, which was
we did,
the highlight of my week, to be honest.
I had to look twice because I thought potentially you were out to mug me. You were there with your mask on and looking very shady around the back of Cumberland Street there. So I was glad to finally realise it was you approaching me and not some young hoodlum.
It's the first time anyone has ever been threatened by my appearance. Right, I'm doing something a bit different this week, right? Because we've talked about a few supermarket beers before, and obviously over the last few weeks, like supermarket shopping's become like a real big deal, and our habits and the way that we do it's all changed. Anyway, I've had a revelation over the last few weeks, and I've discovered Aldi, which I never really entertained Aldi before, but over the last couple of months or so, it's been an absolute flipping saviour for me and has been fantastic. But I know it's maybe not hugely renowned for its beer offering. So I thought, well, let's have a go and let's see what we come up with. So I will point out two things. Firstly, I'm not sure the beer that I've got actually has a brewery on it. Oh, actually it does. This costs less than £1, right? So this is from Aldi. It's Freak Ale Works, and it's called Phantom Pale Ale. And it does tell me what it's got in it. It's Citra, Mosaic, Topaz, Ella, and Galaxy hops in there. It says it's crafted in small batches. So yeah, I've never had a beer before from Aldi, but less than £1 this cost. So I thought I would give it a try, and I will let you know whether it's any good or not.
You hop geeks, am I right in thinking that Ella, Topaz, and Galaxy are all Australian?
I think so.
Yeah.
I don't think that this beer is made in Australia. It doesn't tell me anything about the brewery or anything like that, but it sounds like it was brewed in the Republic of Ireland. There's a couple of suggestions there, but yeah, don't know anything more about it. But looking forward to giving it a try and see whether or not it's any good or not. And right, our guest this week, we have actual brewing royalty joining us on the Hopcast this week. Of St. Mars of the Desert fame, it is Dan. Hello, Dan.
Hello, how's it going? Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you very much for joining us. So we've got probably 1,000,001 questions that we're all going to fire at you. But first of all, the most important question is, what are you drinking?
I'm drinking Hackeshore Keller beer out of my brewery, Zahender Steinkrug.
I'm very jealous of this time.
That's what I'm doing, yeah. I'm going to switch to one of my own beers in a minute, but at the moment, that's what I'm starting off with.
Beer.
I'm a big fan of Hackeshore. It's one of my favourite of the continental lagers. Yeah. Me and Jim have been we've been wandering up to Archer Road because it's really walkable to us, and they have a really great selection of continental lagers there. So Hackeshore is one that we typically will always buy at least 2 of those, and then do a bit of a lucky dip from the rest of them around.
This came from Archer Road as well. So I think I was delivering there last week or something.
Dan, I mean, we're quite a few weeks into lockdown now. It kind of feels a bit all kind of normal now. But what has the lockdown experience been like for St. Mars of the Desert? Normally by now, of course, tap room would be open. We'd all be sat in your lovely yard soaking up the sun that we've had over the last few weeks. But I mean, it's all played out very different. But you have kind of carried on in terms of brewing and getting new beers out there.
Well, there's been a lot to learn, really, with all of this. Our first instinct was to just stop production and just sort of feel bad about ourselves, which we didn't really do. But what we did do is we reduced the batch sizes to as small as we could fit, which in a brewery tends to be, if you brew twice into one fermenter, it would be one of the brews, and then how low can you actually go in your kettle before you blow out whatever's your heat source is. So we went from having 20 hectoliter batches down to 800 liter batches, which, as it turns out, doesn't work well because of the geometry of the tanks. You end up losing a lot more when you're dry hopping, and we've been doing a lot of that sort of thing. So then we've gone in the opposite direction now, and we are brewing these massive batches, and they're almost all going into can, which is kind of a dream. If you told us maybe this time last year that we'd be packaging that much into small packs, we wouldn't know how, especially without any wholesalers. We wouldn't know where they were going. There must have been a big hole in the ground. We were throwing them in or something. But people have seemingly, the tap room's gone, but interest is still there. And also, I think rounding the new year, a lot of people heard about us for the first time. So Martha had this deep, long list of accounts around the country that had already wanted our beer, but then faced with what was happening, the loss of wholesalers, really, they want any beer in some of these shops, because they're having a harder and harder time getting it, maybe because breweries are shipping directly to customers and things like that. So we've switched directions quite a few times in the last few months, and that has been it has been good because it's kept us busy, kept us fine-tuning what we're doing, not only in the brewery but in learning our canning line. To be honest, getting those oxygen levels down, and doing what we want to do. So it's been really good for us in a way that we wouldn't have expected. The tap room, who knows if that'll ever be open again, but the fact that we're able to sell to more and more people, and there's still an interest in our beer, has been pretty cool.
Cool. I mean, it's kind of been an interesting week in terms of like news about pubs in Sheffield, because, well, there was the news about, I don't know if it's a pub any of us will have frequented before, but the Pitsmore, where people were hiding in cupboards when police raided it because they were opening illegally. But also in kind of more relevant pub news, the Callum Island Tavern reopened this week doing takeaway beers. And I noticed the Raven Inn as well doing takeaway beers, including Clamp from St. Mars of the Desert. Although I mention this because there was an unfortunate typo, and it was advertised on social media as St. Mars of the Dessert.
Oh, I've heard that one before, yeah.
I was going to ask whether or not you've had it before, but it did get me thinking, because I think all four of us, to some extent, are big fans of dessert beers. So, I mean, surely there's like a spin-off range that you could do here, St. Mars of the Dessert. Like, if you're kind of twiddling your thumbs a little through lockdown, an entire menu of dessert beers.
Well, I'd have to die of coronavirus before that happens, but it's possible, I suppose.
I mean, you sound a bit uncertain about it. Your arm could be twisted.
Yeah, it's well, we've actually poured at festivals being called St. Mars of the Dessert, so we know it's one of those words that you don't want to think about whether there's one or two S's. So we do often come out that way. And if people think we're some kind of dessert brewery, well, that's fine with me. What does it mean anyway? Some French village? Yeah.
I had a look at some pictures this morning online of St. Mars du Dessert in France near Nantes. How come you ended up there? I know you were looking for different places to brew.
Well, that's a funny one, because that is the other St. Mars du Dessert.
Right.
So the one near Nantes. We were in Pays de la Loire, which is not much further north. Well, what was happening? We had this epic search for where to build a brewery, and it started with us in Boston, leaving Boston, traveling a little bit, and then when we came back to the idea of course we're going to get back in the beer industry after saying, oh no, I'm going to get into the sausage business or whatever it was. I remember drawing pictures and trying to invent new sausages and things. But I grew up in the beer business. Well, since I've been 21 and working in breweries. So we decided we wanted to get back in the beer business, but we also wanted to make sure we weren't around the kind of snow and cold that we had in Boston, which just took over. And I know it builds character, but I'm already built. It's already built me. I can go wherever I want now. So we thought we were going to end up in Florida somewhere, to be honest. And we drove down to Florida and stopped in every city along the way until we got to Miami. And it just wasn't happening. Nothing was saying, you should come to build a brewery here. And it's quite an investment, not just in money, but in your life. You want to have a happy time. You want to know you're going to be around happy people. And, there's other things. You look for colleges, and you can't move to a place that nobody lives and people don't have any money and things like that. But anyway, so make a long story short, and it's not actually making it all that much shorter. But we came to England and we started looking around. We thought we were going to build a brewery in Manchester. We couldn't find how that was going to work. Then we went to Leeds. We went all over the place. We're almost on Escape to the Country twice, because we were looking around and we kept on sending them, well, can we build a brewery here? And then they would say, they have these great researchers at Escape to the Country that tell you don't have enough money to do what you want to do. So they were part of our consultations when we were looking for sites. And then we just said, oh, to hell with it. and we went down. We took the Curry ferry down to Normandy, and loved it there. And in my youth, I was really a francophile, and of course I have a French name. And I spent time living with a family in Nantes, which you just talked about. And I always wanted to live in France. And we found this beautiful farm that was in Saint-Mars du Désert. And it was it was properly rural, but it was formerly owned by an English family. So they built this the type of a garden that Monty Don would build. And although it was a bit disused, so you could picture, putting it back together. It had these great 17th century outbuildings that you could see everything. As soon as you walked in, you knew exactly what you're going to do with this building. It had something like 8 acres, beautiful farmhouse, the absolute dream. About 100,000 euros, that sort of thing. It had 3-phase because in France, your default electricity is 3-phase and then stepped down from there. So we even in Attercliffe, we didn't have 3-phase where we had to spend a lot of money to bring it in. So it was just perfect in a lot of ways. But we chickened out because nobody lived there. We had a funny interaction with the real. I've told this so many times, and you guys have probably all heard this, but I suppose there are probably other people watching this. But we had this funny interaction with the real estate agent, and we said, "So what else is around St. Mars of the Desert?" Like hoping she would say something. "Oh, we've got these great people that make brie over there," but instead she says, "Well, I'll put it to you like this: what's on Mars?" I said, "I don't know, stone." She's like, "Okay, and what's on the desert?" I said, "All right, there's nothing here," and it would just be us. So I thought that was kind of fun. And then we came here. I can't even remember how it happened, but I remember driving through Sheffield and seeing empty industrial buildings as there still are, and just knowing they had a great beer reputation. So just seemed like an obvious, and there was that fantastic study that was done online that with Pete Brown. It was just the kind of thing. It was just enough to that study was enough to get me sort of interested in Sheffield. And then we came here, we looked around, and we just bought a house and we stayed. There's other places. We spent a month in Asheville, North Carolina, in the middle of all of that, and we thought we were going to build a brewery there, and that didn't work. But we saw any kind of city that you could have seen. We probably looked inside about 80 farmhouses in Great Britain and France. We almost ended up in Wales a few times, Shropshire, Herefordshire. We were up in the Highlands. It was kooky. It was kooky. I don't know. I can't believe it. We ended up doing something after all of that. It should have just depressed us.
Well, we are very, very pleased to have you. If anyone is interested in the full kind of St. Mars of the Desert story, we did come out and spend a good couple of hours with you, and Martha, and that episode is still available if you ever scroll back through the feed, and we kind of really got into the story of what brought you to Sheffield. It is a fascinating story. It's well worth having a listen to that. Now, I'm intrigued, Adam and Laura, what you make of your Utopian beers.
Do you want to go first, Laura?
Okay. It's really good. It's not as dark. It's more kind of ambery than dark. And I think because of that, it's not got quite as much of a kind of roasty, toasty, caramelly body as I was expecting it to have. But it's really delicious. It's really, really clean. It's got a bit more going on than kind of the more classic sort of lighter lagers would have to it. I don't have anything bad to say about it apart from it doesn't look quite as I expected it to, which isn't a bad thing, I don't think.
Well, so, this is actually my second one. Like, last night I had the Pilsner, which I thought was really good. I love a Pilsner. I love that kind of extra bite you get from that really kind of almost like, I don't know, it's like bitter or hoppy. It's somewhere in there, and it's kind of that more like better mouthfeel. But yeah, I've got the unfiltered version of the British Lager, and I think it says that it's kind of their flagship beer. They're only a year old, I think, as well. So, but yeah, this is it's really good. I think a lot of people say that it's very difficult to hide behind a lager, and especially these craft brewers are doing these. You will hit some duds, fairly frequently. I think, but this doesn't. It doesn't disappoint at all. And I think if you are a lager drinker or respect that kind of style, go and check it out. Really,
Yeah.
really good. They are doing deliveries as well,
Yeah.
so
I'd agree with that, definitely. I've got the British one to try as well, which I haven't had yet, but yeah, I think it's spot on.
Yeah, so thanks to Rich for sending these out. Really appreciate it.
Good stuff. The Freak Ale Works Phantom Pale Ale is quite sharp, although actually the more I've drunk it, I've got quite into it. It has got plenty of flavour. There's a kind of a little element of feet going on in there as well. And the aftertaste is a little bit dodgy, but for 99p, I'm not going to complain. It's all right. Sean, is your beer living up to your expectations?
Yeah, it's my memory of it was only from a week ago, so it was still quite fresh in my mind, and it's beautiful, tart and full of gorgeous fruit. And I've also thought actually Colonel and St Mars have got some sort of common ethos in not using too many other additional fancy pants ingredients, and damsons, I suppose, are about as fancy pants as Colonel might get. Where would you go, Dan, in terms of, would you include fruit in some of your brews? Any intentions to do that? I know you've had some of your beers, of course, as well.
Yeah, fruit is great. To me, that's as far as I ever want to go. I like sugar in beer. I don't think it's a cheat because you're getting a different character from it, and certainly you learn that coming from America. We thought all beer was made with all malt. We didn't realize all these Belgian beers that we were drinking, and fair enough, a lot of the English beers we were drinking had secrets to us, which was sugar. There was usually some bucket of something that went in that we never knew about. So yeah, sugar, fruit, spices way down, deep down, where they're sort of influencing the character, but you don't know what they taste like. That to me, like that fascinates me. I like it. I remember thinking when I had my first Chimay, that they were throwing spices all over the place in that brewery, but like now it's just a weird phenolic yeast strain, But I like that. I like that kind of stuff. I like some stank. I don't like feet necessarily, but but stank and beer is all right to me.
Good stuff. I've got a question for everyone. We've not got a huge amount of time left, so this will be kind of quick fire. So there was a story in the national news this week about a couple of guys in London who are spending lockdown literally locked in a pub. And I mean, there's plenty of ways that you can make pastime when you're locked, in a pub. But it got me thinking, right? If you had to pick one pub in Sheffield to spend the whole of lockdown in, which pub are you going to pick? You can only pick one, and bear in mind you're going to be there for what, a good month and a half, pushing 2 months. So I think Sean's ready to show his hand already.
Mine is very easy. Yeah, it would be the Rutland. It's got a kitchen in there, a very creative kitchen, so I'd be okay for food. It's obviously got an amazing range of beers. I'd be good there. It's got a scrumpy old sofa in one corner downstairs, a sort of leatherette sort of sofa thing that would be all right to sleep on. It's got a jukebox in there, so we'll be okay for entertainment. And it's got a big thick door, so I can keep everyone out.
Quite strict rules on that jukebox, though, Sean.
Yeah,
so
well, lockdown rules are obviously are different. So I'll be able to put anything I wanted on there, including Arctic Monkeys, who are always on the band list, of course.
Still, you're not allowed to play any Morrissey songs though, because he's a dick. Right, Adam. Where
you know what? I was probably going to say the same thing. I was going to offer up another question about where were you going to go to first after all this is kind of finished. But weirdly, I suppose your question is quite interesting because it kind of knocks out all micro pubs in my mind, as in you kind of want a bit of space. But I think Sean's just literally just made my decision for me in the sense that the food at Rutland is pretty much it's perfect. So I mean, obviously the beer's great, but the beer's great in a lot of places. But just having Chef Rico to cook for me every day, some nice exo sauce, octopus, and all sorts of stuff. Yeah, I'm gonna go Rutland.
I'd not really accounted for the food side of it. I'd not thought about that because I assume you wouldn't have like your own personal chef with you during lockdown. And I see different to you,
Maybe
Adam.
he's locked in there with
Rather than ruling out micropubs, I was going to say I'd probably go for bar stewards because Al and Charlie would just keep you entertained. Like the time would just go flying. But I mean, that's assuming that they would choose to spend lockdown with me in their pub rather than their families and children, which I'm sure that would be the choice that they would make in that situation. Dan, what's your take on this? The time that you've spent in Sheffield, the pubs that you've visited.
Well, I agree with you. I don't ever think about food like when I'm going out for beers. That's literally an afterthought that comes at the very end of the night. But in this situation, I get what Sean's saying. For me, I'm really I like space is important to me. I like a space that has a good vibe to it, and for me, the pub I would want to spend time in if I had to be locked in would be Shakespeare, because I just love the cavernous feel, even though it's not even all that big. It just has this strange cavernous vibe to it that really I'm with. Yeah.
On that note, but another pub that I'd be interested in being locked in would be the Sheffield Tap, because it's just kind of goes on forever. It's just a huge big pub. You'd never get bored in there because there's always a different like nook and cranny.
I think I'd be scared in the Sheffield Tap. I think those high ceilings and stuff make it a little bit creepy.
It is a tall place, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is there a ghost in there, Laura? The ghost of Sheffield Tap?
Yeah, I bet there are. It feels like there might be, doesn't it?
Tappy the ghost.
There's another call to the Shakespeare, which is I don't know if you've ever played it, Dan, but bar billiards. They have a bar billiards table, and that is a cracking game if you've never experienced it. I've never played it in Shakespeare, but I remember playing it fondly and learning in the Gardener's Rest.
Yeah, that's what I've played it before, but
but they have one at the Shakespeare upstairs.
I'll have to check it out one day.
Yeah.
It's kind of hidden, isn't it, in that little spare room that never kind of gets used for anything. Right, Laura.
Well, I think this is a really hard question, actually, but I'm going to go for the venue that when I am in it, I feel the most at home. So for that reason, I'm picking Pour on London Road. Yeah, because it's nice and comfy. Assuming that you'd like we've already kind of touched on, if we've got staff in there, they're always absolutely lovely. Really nice beer selection, pizzas available, and board games, so you can't get bored. So I think for that reason, I think it's also the pub I'm probably missing the most at the moment. So yeah, I'm gonna pick Pour for being the most homely of pubs that I like to go to.
Good stuff. That's interesting. I wouldn't have expected you to go with that, but that is really interesting. We've only got a few minutes left before we get booted off our Zoom call. So very quickly, Dan, what are your upcoming brew plans? Tell us a little bit about what we can expect in the coming weeks and months.
Okay, so at the moment we've got a big batch of Oscar Bell, which was a hoppy pale New England IPA pale that we've done before, and we've made a bigger batch of it this time so that we can get it out to more people. Brewed a new Jackdaw 3 this week with a completely different mixture of yeast strains, and we just dry hopped it a few hours before this show. We're brewing another New England IPA because that's what people want. And after that, and then we've got a Russian Imperial Stout that we're brewing. That's not Barbara Papa, it's a different one. But we're doing that coming up shortly after that, and then I think we're going to hit a lager up, and then who knows? I don't know. Whenever something changes, and whenever something changes in this whole thing, it's probably going to mess all that up. So
We have had a question actually for you, Dan, from Michael Hobson, fellow SMOD squadder, who would like to know how the Cool Ship beer is getting on in the fooder.
Okay, so the Cool Ship beer, we have moved it into barrels. We freed up the Cool Ship and we brewed into the Cool Ship just before the lockdown with Will Myers from Cambridge Brewing Company in the US, and we've done a mixed firm sort of super saison in there. So what is coming on in the barrels is dependent on the barrel that you look into. But yeah, I would say sourness is going up. At the moment, I literally go in with a syringe and take bits out, and I played blending it with other things. But it's one of those things that if we're still here in 2 years, we'll definitely be drinking it in some way, shape, or form.
Exciting.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Something for us to look forward to. Well, all that remains for us to do is our now weekly obligatory drinking the air photograph. So if you can hold up your brews and your glasses and big smiles. No gormless this week. We're all going to look perfect. There we go. Brill. Dan, thank you ever so much for joining us. Obviously, I mean, I can't imagine there's anyone that listens to this show that doesn't already follow you guys on Twitter and other social media, because I know you've got some other stuff that you've been doing with your virtual pub crawls and stuff like that you've been up to over the last few weeks. So, yeah, if anyone doesn't, then track down Dan on the St. Mars of the Desert socials. And the rest of us, we will see you back here with another new guest next week. So have a brilliant week. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Cheers. That's you.